Hi there, my name is Steve Crabb, and I'm guessing you're watching this because you are either personally suffering and struggling with a phobia and you're looking for solutions, or maybe you're looking around on the internet for solutions for somebody you know who has a phobia. So I'm really pleased because you've come to just the right place. In this short video, I'm going to share with you some of the information that I've shared with my thousands and thousands of clients over the last 20 years, the sort of information I use when I teach and train doctors, coaches, and therapists in how to deal with phobias. And it will answer some of the key questions you have, the sort of questions I used to have before I even became a coach. I used to have phobias myself. I used to have a phobia of public speaking, a phobia of needles, and a phobia of dentists. Now I regularly get in front of groups of people and coach and train. I've done TV work, radio work, so the public speaking phobia is well gone. And nice bright shiny teeth, so I have no problem with the dentist and no problem with needles whatsoever. So I'm really pleased for you because it's the sort of information that I wished I had had available all of those years ago. So I'm going to pop down below the duration of the video. I'm going to keep it quite short, and I'm going to answer some of the key questions that most people have. Questions such as, why have I even got a phobia? What's up with me? The other question is, so what works best? What works out there? There's so many choices. Who can I trust? And how does it work? And the other question that many people ask is, so if I look to overcome my phobia, do I actually have to face my fear? So I'm going to answer those key questions and some of the other questions that people always regularly ask. So all you have to do now is just keep on watching. So as you probably know, 1 in 30 people suffer from phobias. Bizarrely, 3 out of 4 people have a fear of public speaking. So the statistics kind of don't match up, do they? But it means if you are somebody who's suffering and struggling with phobia, you're in good company. It affects most of the population. And I think the figures will be a lot higher because there's quite often a stigma associated with admitting that somebody has a phobia. A lot of people will think, well, people will think maybe I'm weak-willed or there's something wrong with me. So that's certainly not the case, but I'm pretty sure that the numbers would be higher if people were actually a lot more honest. So what we're going to do during this video is I'm going to explain to you how phobias work, how they can be cleared up so you have a better understanding. And I want to do that for one reason. I want you to live phobia free. I know what it's like to have got over a phobia. This video, by the way, is not about you coming and seeing me. It's about making sure that you really understand that if you've been suffering with a phobia, whether it's something where you experience a bit of mild anxiety, or maybe to the other extreme you have extreme panic attacks, that need not be the future for you. So I want to really make that clear for you. This is not a pitch. I will be telling you about how to come and work with me if that's what you want to do. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine with me as well. What I'm really interested in is making sure that you understand that whatever you've been experiencing, it can change. Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you the details so you can download a free relaxing meditation. Okay, so that's a thank you for listening to me for however long this video is going to be. I'll put the website there and I'll put a promotion code so you can download a free relaxation that you can listen to. So there's no purchases needed for that. It's just a gift from me. So let's get straight into this. First question people ask when they have a phobia is, what's up with me? Why have I got a phobia? And the answer to that is really simple. There's nothing up with you. You are okay. As a person, you're okay. The phobia is just a behavior. It's something that you've learned to do, and you're not doing it on purpose, and you're not doing it consciously. Why would anyone terrify themselves purposefully? It is, however, an unconscious mechanism. It's a protection mechanism which is overprotecting you. And the unconscious protection mechanism is a learnt behavior. You had to have learnt to be scared of whatever it is you're phobic of, because there would have been a time that you weren't phobic of it. Babies aren't born with phobias. Young children learn phobias. Adults learn phobias. It's a learnt behavior, so there's nothing wrong with you. However, let's get clear on this. If someone does have a phobia, it can have a profound knock-on effect to things such as confidence, self-esteem, self-belief. And it can certainly limit people in terms of what they do with their lives. So let's have a look at how a phobia actually works. Let's start by looking at what isn't a phobia. Well, we're all hardwired with 3 natural fears. These are things that when we were born, think of them as programs. Imagine you were a phone, a mobile phone, a smartphone, and you come with preloaded apps. You would have these preloaded apps already installed and already set up. The first app that you would have is if there's a movement towards your eyes, you would flinch, you would move away from it. And the reason we want these hardwired feared responses is we don't want to have to think about it. If something's moving towards your eyes, you don't want to think, oh, maybe I should move away. No, you want a system that just reacts to it. The second hardwired fear is the falling sensation. So it's not a fear of heights, it's actually the motion of falling down. And the reason we want that one hardwired is so that if we fall, our hands come up immediately to protect us. That's why things such as roller coasters work so well, because they disorientate people. They create an almost reactive, hardwired feared response. It's one of the reasons why people with flying phobias, they react so well, because the turbulence they may experience triggers off the falling sensation. Now, the third hardwired fear is the fear of loud noises, of bangs. If I clap my hands, there'll be part of you that will react and startle to it. Again, this is useful, especially if we're young. If somebody shouts stop, it stops you from running into danger. You freeze. But those are the only three naturally hardwired fears. All phobias come out of those categories. They are behaviors that we have to learn. We have to have an experience of them. So let's look at how do we get over a phobia? Well, best way to understand how you get over phobia is to understand how a phobia gets created in the first place. So this model is something that I teach people, and I want to make clear it's not exactly like this, it's just something like this. So I'm going to keep out of all the medical or scientific descriptions, so it's just a useful representation. Now, you may have heard of this before, but I want you to think of your mind as being like an iceberg. So the tip of the iceberg, the part above the surface that we all see, is what we call the conscious mind. Most of the mind is beneath the surface. We call that the unconscious mind. And your unconscious mind is the part of you that runs most of the system. It helps you to grow hair, helps you to digest food, and dilate pupils. If you cut your finger, your unconscious system sends whatever materials are needed, does the repair job, and knows when to stop. You don't have to do any of that consciously. You couldn't. You couldn't chew food consciously. You don't breathe consciously. But most people believe that the conscious mind is the part that runs the system. And this is what confuses a lot of people with phobias, because they might be determined, they might have willpower, and they go, I'm going to change this. And for some reason it doesn't change. So I'm going to give you an experience of why that is. Just follow along with this, okay? Put your hands together like this, okay? Put your hands together like this. And I'm going to reverse this round, so I'm mirroring you. I want you to push as hard as you can with your right hand, okay? You doing that? Now, I'm going to follow my instructions, and again, I'm going to reverse it round so it mirrors in the screen. Were you doing that? Or were you doing this? I've done this on many trainings, and virtually everybody is sitting there doing this, despite the fact I said push as hard as you can with your right hand. Okay. Now, what they're doing is they're resisting with their other hand. So I want you to think of it this way. This hand is the conscious mind. The part of you goes, I want to be confident when I get on stage. I want to be confident when I go to the doctors or the dentist or fly or drive or whatever it might be. And this part, the unconscious mind, is going, no, you're not. There's resistance. And when there's a conflict between conscious desires and unconscious desires, the unconscious will always get its way, which is why a lot of people get stuck and why willpower, determination, even confidence just doesn't really help. It's not about that. In order to change a phobia, we have to re-educate the unconscious mind, which has learnt to overprotect you. We teach it to calm down. We teach it to relax. Make sense? So let's just have a look at how phobia gets learnt. The unconscious mind, two of its many jobs, and you've got 50 trillion cells in your body, 2,000 chemical reactions in every cell, every second of every day. You're doing a whole lot of stuff unconsciously. But two of the important jobs that it has is to learn and to protect. And it also has to learn about what to protect you from. So what would have happened is at some time in the past, you would have had what we call a trigger event. Now, you may not consciously remember this, and some people go, but Steve, I don't know or can't recall my trigger event, can't think of anything. It doesn't matter whether you're consciously aware of it or not, it would have had to have happened, and your unconscious mind does remember it. So it could have been maybe you were bitten by a dog when you were younger, or even a dog barked and it scared you, or it could be something that, when you were smaller, it was important to you then. It may not seem such a big incident now, but at that point in time, your mind learnt that something was scary. Simple as that. It could be an activity, could be an object, could be a situation. You had to have had the trigger experience. Now, when I say you had to have it, that doesn't mean you had to have the dog bite you yourself. So I'm using the dog as an example. If you've got dog phobia, I apologize for that, but I have to use something as an example. You could have seen somebody else being bitten by a dog. Someone could have told you that a dog is scary. Okay, so you don't actually have to have had the experience yourself. You could learn from observing, learn by being taught by other people, which is why some people in family groups, they believe that phobias are genetic. It's like they're handed down. No, nobody's found the phobia gene yet. But what you will have done is you may have learned from the bigger people. Okay? So there will have either been a trigger event, or there could have been a series of smaller events that seem consciously to be unassociated, but at some level your unconscious grouped them together. It could also be that maybe you were in, I'd call it an altered state. Maybe you were stressed, maybe you were tired, maybe you were drunk, maybe you'd taken drugs. You were in an altered state and something happened, and the mind at that point went, well, I'm a bit out of control here. That's scary. And what would have happened is you would have thought about it. At the time of the event, the trigger event or the series of minor events, you would have thought about them. And each time you did that, you reinforced the filing system. Now the unconscious mind has learned what to be scared of, and now it knows how to protect you as well. And it does it in one of two ways. The first way is with worry. The other way is with fear. Now what the worry does, the worry helps you to avoid the situation. If you've been experiencing a phobia, you'll understand this. You'd be thinking about it before it's ever happened. You'd be thinking and creating the anxiety and the worry in your body. That's a protection mechanism. It's part of the system going, let's get them so anxious that they don't go anywhere near that potential problem. And the other response is if you find yourself actually in the situation that your unconscious mind has decided is something to avoid, it will want to get you out of the situation. That's part of the fight or flight mechanism. But I want you to really get this because this is important. The unconscious protection mechanism just wants you to be safe. That's all it's doing. It's simply overdoing its job. And that's where the work comes in. Because what we're going to do is we're going to re-educate the protection mechanism and we're going to use what works. Now, I've trained in multiple disciplines, so the approach that works is a blended approach. I've never found one particular technique or one particular discipline that works for everybody all the time. And as I say, I've worked with over 10,000 people. If there was one thing that worked for everybody all the time, I would be using it. It's always a blended approach. So let's start and go back to basics. At the beginning, you were okay. You had the learning experience. You thought about it and reinforced it. You didn't do that on purpose, but you still did it nonetheless. And that's again the unconscious reinforcing so that you really do learn that that thing, that object, that situation, that event is something to avoid. The setting gets turned up. It could either be set to worry a bit, worry a lot, be really anxious, or even be terrified. And we're going to use a range of approaches using hypnosis, using stories, using metaphors, other techniques such as psychosensory techniques where we use eye movements and touch. It's a whole blended approach, and neurolinguistic programming. Now, I'm not going to spend any time going into the details of all of these different disciplines. There will be videos that will go into more detail later if you do want to learn more, but this is not the time for that. So it's a multidisciplinary approach where we re-sensitize the system. We re-educate the protection mechanism. We get it to turn down the settings and switch it off. Make sense? It works this way. Once we've desensitized the fight or flight response, the hot buttons, the triggers that you would have reacted to and experienced the phobic response, the system, your unconscious mind will learn that there's a different way, that you can just relax, you can stay calm, you can stay centered, you can stay grounded in the situation where you would have had your phobic response. You got that? Now, I want to keep this simple because there are many people when they contact us, they go, well, I've got this phobia and I've got that phobia and I've got another phobia and I've got this phobia. And they think, first of all, there's something really wrong with them. But there's nothing wrong with them, as I say. It's simply the unconscious protection mechanism doing a really good job. And quite often these are called complex phobias. So there's nothing complex about them at all. They're actually quite simple. But they work this way. And it will also help you to understand how we basically will collapse your phobia. So if you come along with one phobia, that's nice and fine, that's simple. If you've got a number of phobias, they can all be dealt with in the same by the same process. So first of all, there's the trigger event. Think of it as a seed that gets planted and then a weed grows. That's the first phobia. And I'll give you a specific example. There's a lady that came to see me. She was agoraphobic. She really didn't like going outside. She had a social phobia, couldn't hang around with people. So it was a real struggle for her to even turn up in the coaching room. But she managed to do that. At the age of 7, she was in one of the old red telephone boxes with her nan. And if you guys remember those telephone boxes, they weren't a great place to hang out. There was always a horrible smell. And if you remember trying to get out the door, there was always 3 exits, and it was always the last one you chose. And if I remember rightly, they pulled inwards, so it was even more difficult to get out. So her nan panicked. She was 8 years of age. She was in a situation. Her unconscious mind went, this is unpleasant, don't like this. So suddenly, she had a learning experience, and she learnt to be anxious of telephone boxes. Now, a week or so later, she went on a train with her nan. And a train is a box. The door closed, her nan was there, so her unconscious mind went, if I was anxious of that, maybe this is similar. So she became anxious of going on train journeys. A short while later, she went on a car journey to the shopping centre with her parents. Well, a car is a box. There was a door. The brain did the connection. Suddenly she was anxious of driving, going anywhere in the car. And where did it go? It went to the shopping centre. So she was anxious of shopping centres. Well, who's at shopping centres? There are people. So suddenly she became anxious of groups of people. Can you see how it's almost like a weed that grows? That can happen sometimes. And if that's happened with you, the good news is we don't have to address all of the individual phobias. They are all the same mechanism. It's the unconscious protection mechanism that's turned up. What we do is we go to the roots of the problem. The way it's all held together, the way you think, the way the unconscious mind learned the system, and we basically do the tidy up process. We tidy up the original trigger events, if they're remembered. We tidy up the worst or the most recent. We train the brain to just be okay. Make sense? And one of the other questions people have is, well, what if I've had my phobia for years? If I've had it for decades, how's it going to change quickly? How is it possible that something that's lasted for so long can change so quickly? Well, the answer is, if you think about how people get phobias, quite often it doesn't take them years to get it. That is something they can learn very, very fast, very, very quickly. It takes one dog. They don't have to worry about it for the next 10 years until they go, oh, now I'm phobic. Your mind learns quickly. It learns very fast. So even if you've been suffering for decades, and I was a person who had 3 decades, 30 years of their phobias, and over the course of a day I cleaned them all up, tidied them all up. So things can change quickly. And if I'm working with people, especially on TV, you don't get long to work. So one of the quickest phobia sessions was actually 20 minutes. It took 20 minutes to clear up a phobia of butterflies that somebody had. And that was triggered by her sister chasing around with a copy of Silence of the Lambs, if you remember the book cover with the moth. And that took about 20 minutes, and then she was in the London Zoo butterfly house, walking around, holding these dinner plate-sized butterflies that were beautiful in her hands. That only took 20 minutes. So it doesn't matter how long you've had the phobia. But there's another important question related to this. If you're asking these questions, it's part of the unconscious protection mechanism wanting to protect you from overcoming your phobia. So my question to anybody that asks questions such as this, what if I've had my phobia for years? I don't believe it can change so quickly. My question to them is always the same. Are you an expert in overcoming phobias? Now, it's a yes or no question. You either are, in which case you're watching this so you can steal my material. That's happened before. I have no problem with that. Or the answer for most people is no. I don't know how to overcome my phobia and I'm not an expert. Okay, most people is no. So if you're not an expert, any thoughts you have that may stop you, may be holding you back, may be preventing you from addressing it, I want you to really get this point. That's part of the protection mechanism. It's protecting you from doing what it thinks it will have to do, which is to face its fear. Okay, so that leads me to the next question people have. Will I have to face my fears? And the answer to that is no. But I want you to also get this, that there are some people that they come to the website, they'll even watch the video, a few people even read all the content there. But most people are what I call the dabblers and the someday people, or the people that will get round to it at some point. These are the people who the unconscious protection mechanism is stopping them from taking action because it believes it will then have to face its fear. Does that make sense? Well, it doesn't work that way. You won't have to face your fear, because if you're having to face your fear, the work's not been done. And I'll give you an example. If I'm working with somebody who has a phobia of lifts, they will not be getting into the lift if they're anxious. We will do the work, the clean-up work, the tidy work. We'll desensitize the trigger events. We'll desensitize the most recent or the worst or the first. They will learn how to be calm and relaxed and grounded. I'll teach them how to do that. It doesn't take long to learn. And only then will we make our way to the lift. And at all times I'll be checking. Are you calm? Are you relaxed? Are you grounded? Only then will we get into the lift and they will be calm. They'll be relaxed. They'll be grounded. They'll go up and down the lift. They'll be calm. They'll be relaxed. They'll be grounded. And then they'll go up and down the lift on their own and they will be fine. And there will be many phobias that we can't actually test. Obviously, we don't have an aircraft. Quite often we can't go driving, and I don't keep critters in the coaching room. So people say, well, will it work when I leave? And the answer to that is yes, because the work will have been done and you'll know what to do. Instead of the reaction, you'll have a different response. So I totally understand if you have those questions, such as, will I have to face my fears? How can it work so quickly? But I want you to really get this and get this point, because it's one of the things that stops most people from taking action. That's the sort of thinking that the dabblers and the someday people have. These are the people that put things off and put things off and put them off. And all that happens is they end up spending months, years, decades suffering from a phobia that need not be there. So don't put off until tomorrow what can change today. And there's a wonderful piece of prose by Pope Paul VI, which for me just sums up the right attitude. And it's this: somebody should tell us right at the start of our lives that we are dying. Then we might live life to the limit, every minute of every day. Do it, I say. Whatever you want to do it now. There are only so many tomorrows. If you've been suffering with a phobia, it can change. It's a case of when it changes and not a case of if it changes. The way to make sure that you are successful, and whether you come to see me or you might choose to go and see someone else, and again, I'm okay with that. Our diaries are always full. My concern, my aim with this video is to make sure that you really get to understand that things can change. If you come along to see me though, bring along your best attitude. Be willing to listen, to learn. Not to see if you agree, not to see if you think it's right or wrong. Just be willing to listen, to learn. Keep an open mind. Be willing to let the information in and follow the instructions. There will be clear, simple, easy to follow instructions. I've never met anybody that couldn't follow the instructions. And commit to doing whatever it takes. And by the way, you don't need to believe that things can change. Think of it this way. If you need to believe something's going to work, that gets in the way of you just showing up. If you just show up and just commit to it and follow the instructions and then things change, well, then you can believe. Make sense? Now, all the information you need is on the website, but we know from the number of people that call and ask us some of the basic questions that people don't always read all the information. So one of the things I'm going to address is, what will it cost? And if you're asking this question, I get money's important. I've kept my rates the same for the last 10 years. Okay, so the rates haven't gone up for the last 10 years simply because I want to make it an affordable proposition for most people. But you're kind of asking the wrong question. Okay, now as much as I understand the money is important and value, is important as well, you're asking the wrong question, because what you should really be asking is, what has the phobia cost you so far? What's it cost you in terms of the hours and hours of worry and anxiety, maybe even depression? What's it cost you in terms of limitations? For some people, phobia creates like a prison of the mind. What are the things you never got to do so far? What are the things that your phobia stopped you from experiencing? That's the real cost. And when you compare that to the cost of a couple of sessions, then you'll see that the actual cost of the session is very reasonable. But the thing that the sessions will give you is this, and this is priceless. When I experienced this, once I was phobia free, the freedom it gave me to go out and be myself, there's no price that can be put to that. There's no price that can be put to the increase in confidence, the increase in self-belief, the increase in self-esteem that comes with being and living phobia-free. So what do you do now? Well, I hope I've given you some food for thought, some ideas that you can reflect upon. You've got some idea of how phobia started, how it's going to change. What to do now is simple. Contact us. The phone number's there. It's always better to email us first because we want to talk to you. So when you email, put your phone number there. Let us know what is the best time to speak, and we will contact you. So don't be surprised. Some people put the details down, send off the contact form, and then they're surprised when we phone them up. That's ridiculous. Have your diary to hand, because the diary does get booked up a couple of weeks in advance. There quite often will be some gaps, but have the diary to hand. And then when you do show up with your for your session, show up with a great attitude. That attitude of being willing to listen, to learn, having an open mind, committing to doing whatever it takes. Because now is the time to do something about it. Don't be one of the someday people or I'll get around to it people. Be the person that takes the action and does it now. So, as I said, I promised a free gift if you sat and you listened and you watched this recording. There's a free relaxing meditation. It's how to easily relax quickly. It contains some wonderful music, some deep theta music, which enables you to go into a light, relaxed trance. There's multi-levels of communication. It's all designed to do a number of things. Firstly, to say to your unconscious mind, you've been caught out. You've been overprotecting. It's time for change. Just relax. Relax quickly and relax deeply. Okay, so the recording is actually relax deeply. And you go to the website www.howtoeasily.com and you enter in the promotion code A5MU. Put that in the coupon code, so you go as if you are purchasing the recording. Put that in the shopping cart and you'll be able to download that for free. So listen, I hope this has been useful. I hope you found it informative. Thank you for watching. And I want to just finish with one last thing. Life without a phobia is so transformative. Just imagine living phobia free. That's the thing to focus on. Just imagine living phobia free. I look forward to meeting you, look forward to hopefully working with you, and I wish you all the best. Thanks for watching.